All the research shows that incarceration alone is highly likely to increase criminal conduct, okay? Then you have high-risk kids in there with low-risk kids. The high-risk kids don't learn anything. The low-risk kids learn whatever the high-risk kids teach them. It doesn't mean that they'll come out worse, but the probability is there.
Welcome to this episode of yall-itics. It is,
we both took a breath there as though we were both starting at the same time.
Who's going to start this?
Again, it looks like both of us.
You know,
or neither of us.
You don't like to look back, but I'm going to look back just a moment to start this episode.
Who says I don't
off.
like to look back?
You're a private guy, and which means you have skeletons in your closet.
It makes no sense.
It is remarkable.
The closet is full of skeletons, but I don't mind looking back.
Looking back, it is remarkable. I didn't end up in juvenile justice at all.
Well, I would say that that's probably very true.
And I know that you and I are so much alike.
Yeah.
You probably do have a record in Harris County, don't you?
I don't.
Was it Galveston County or Harris County?
Both, and I don't have one in either, except for some speed violations probably from years ago that were taken care of. But it is interesting that you say that, though, because I think about this in terms of juveniles, and I also have thought about this in terms of adults. When I've done things with TDCJ and gone inside prisons and so forth, and you start to talk to people, and you realize that, man, if not for a little bit of luck or a slightly different decision or some slightly different influences, I could be sitting where that person is and they could be sitting where I am. And I have thought that on many occasions.
Oh, I have too. And I wonder if the system was different, if the decisions were different. I don't know.
Or if you'd just gotten caught.
Yeah. Or
because all of us have done things wrong.
What'd you do?
But did you get caught?
What did you do?
Well, now those skeletons were not pulling out of the closet.
Well, there's no statute of limitations. It still extends this far.
Well, it's
depending
not
on your crime, but what
that
did you
serious.
We still have privacy concerns.
Yes. Thank you, Judge, for weighing in.
Let's go ahead and bring in our guest, Judge John Creuzot, the Dallas County District Attorney. And we're talking about juvenile justice because this is something he recognized that's a problem. That was an issue in Dallas County, and how Dallas County wasn't living up to what it should be doing in rehabilitating so many young people who go through the system.
Not just Dallas County,
Dallas.
So many other counties too, including here in Texas. And you decided that this was going to be a centerpiece of your administration as district attorney.
Yes, I did.
So cases. So lay this out for us, Judge. You looked at this in 2022 and said we got to do something about this. Cases were taking far too long. It was a revolving door with a lot of juveniles coming back in, and there were a lot of people, I think you said, that were in the system that shouldn't have been in the system.
Right. Well, actually, I didn't see all that at the time. That was the purpose of having the researcher come in and do what's called the process evaluation. How do we process these children? Are we doing it according to recommended standards? And are we wasting time? Are we spending time well? And how are they flowing through the system? And so that's what we looked at.
Were you surprised when you saw the results of what they came up with?
Yes, very much so. So let me tell you what triggered this. So I'm looking at cases where we are trying to make a decision to ask a judge whether or not to certify a child to stand trial as an adult. So we can file the motion, but the juvenile judge has to make the decision. And going over these cases, there was a very common theme. They had been in and out and in and out and in and out. They had been referred to this, that, or the other. And yet, despite all that, they were getting worse. And so at the point I'm looking at them, we're talking murder and capital murder.
Wow.
Okay?
The serious offenses.
Serious offenses, right. And as I noticed the pattern, I'm asking myself, what's wrong with this? Why are these kids being rearrested, detained, and referred theoretically to something that's going to make them better, but it's not? Then another data point was brought to me, and that is we had a very, very low disposition rate compared to what the aspirational standards are.
And tell our listeners what that means. Disposition rate is what?
Well, so what we're doing is in the first 30 days, it's recommended somewhere about 75% of these cases get disposed of, resolved. Okay, which means you got to front load your efforts. Okay, we were doing 3%.
Wow.
In the first 30 days?
Right, and we looked at Tarrant County, and they were doing 34% at the time. So just right next door, even though it's hard to meet aspirational standards for anyone, okay, they were way ahead of us. So we actually went to, I did not, but I asked my staff to go to Tarrant County and talk to their juvenile justice system as to how they were accomplishing that. And they had an entirely different process that involved the juvenile department as opposed to law enforcement, seeing to it that the kids got the proper, that they were served the proper papers, and instead of having a constable doing it, they were having one of the members of the department do it. And so the assessment process was begun. The paperwork was started. Whether they needed a lawyer or not was taken back to the judge, and the judge could assign the lawyer. And so there was a lot of work going on the case. If a case did get filed, they showed up to court ready to resolve the case. In Dallas, we have a constable that takes the case to the child's family for court date. Then they show up, usually without a lawyer. They're going to need a lawyer. They will need a lawyer, so they'll be appointed. Okay.
All this takes time.
All this takes time. So you've blown past 30 days already.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the number I think in the report said that at that time, the average detention to disposition period was 140 days. And,
Right.
and you're trying to aim for 30. 140 days is a long time.
30 or less, yeah.
And then, after you all implemented a lot of reforms, that got down to about 57 days by 2024. Still not hitting that goal that you want,
Right.
but significantly down. Can we talk about escalatory behavior here? Because let's say I'm a juvenile. I've done something sort of minor, but, bad enough, whatever. Maybe I'm even, detained. How significant is that if it takes a really long time for me to get to court and get this thing resolved?
Well,
because I've got influences around me in there.
Right, and that's the problem. For those who were in the detention facility, which was a lot of them, they were not, well, let me put it this way. All the research shows that incarceration alone is highly likely to increase criminal conduct, okay? Then you have high-risk kids in there with low-risk kids. The high-risk kids don't learn anything. The low-risk kids learn whatever the high-risk kids teach them. It doesn't mean that they'll come out worse, but the probability is there.
That's an
The
underappreciated thing, don't you think?
It is, and that's really kind of research-based criminal justice. So a lot of this is applicable in the adult system and also in the juvenile system. You don't want to mix those populations, and we were. The other thing we were doing, instead of referring these cases out to whatever referral that could meet the child's needs, okay, we were filing on 91% of the cases formal petitions which put them in front of the judge, whether it's a case that needed to be in front of the judge or not. And so that was part of the look, that we're very, very high. And in fact, that was what I call our default mode. We just filed on all these kids. Kids were left in the detention facility 6 months later, given probation to go home. Well, can you imagine that you've been locked up?
Yeah.
You're 14, you're 15, you're 16, you've been locked up for 6, 7, 8 months sometimes, and then you go home. What happened to your life and all of that? Everything has come apart. Your family has come apart. Your education has come apart. Part of the investigation that this opened up was, are they really educating the children in the facility? And
Are
the
they?
answer, well, I'm sure they are today, but back then, that's a open question as to whether or not some of those records were falsified. I don't know the results of that investigation. I'm told that there were issues and problems, but nobody has sent it to us, so I don't know.
And Judge, Texas has this reputation for being tough on crime, and people want to lock folks up and throw away the key.
Right.
Is this approach being soft on crime, though?
No.
Why not?
Well, so I was mentioning to you all that I just got today, just today, an email from my staff, one member of my staff, and I can't tell you that these changes are the reason for these numbers, but we looked at the number of violent offenses sent to us by the largest jurisdictions, police jurisdictions in Dallas County.
The largest police departments in Dallas County.
Yes.
Their numbers.
So from 24 to 2025, for example, Duncanville is a 75% reduction. Rowlett, 64%. Lancaster, 60%. Dallas, 40%. Irving, 38%. Dallas ISD, 33%, and on and on.
And this is reductions in crimes
That are sent to us.
that are sent to you involving juveniles.
Right.
And we've heard for years too, in different jurisdictions as well, that police departments just decide we're not even going to take it to the DA's office because we know they're not going to even charge for this level of crime. Is that some of this? Do you think?
No, these are violent crimes.
These are violent crimes,
and we take every case. We don't deny any case.
And so for the crimes that you guys are trying to intercept, for the kids you're trying to intercept ahead of time, who might not be the worst kids, who might have first tangled up with law enforcement,
right,
first time in the system. What are these cases? Are these fights in school? Are these vandalism cases? A
lot of it were fights, exactly. Disorderly conduct. Some of it is vaping. Some of it is small amounts of drugs, marijuana maybe, this, that, and the other.
Vaping can get you arrested?
Well, not vaping, but vape pens that have THC
with
in them.
THC in them, okay.
Yeah.
Now, there would be critics who would say that reforms, like changing the way the system is done, might move prosecutions out of the justice system and, kind of push them off to someone else to deal with rather than solving them. What do you say to people who take that mindset?
Well, I think that mindset doesn't understand what we do when we refer a case out. First of all, one of the things that we were doing but paying zero attention to was the risk needs assessment, okay? That's like going to the doctor. You feel bad, you don't know what's wrong, you've been feeling bad, and you go through a series of tests and the doctor says you have A, B, and C issues, but we're not going to treat them. Well, wait a minute.
Why am I here?
How am I going to get better?
Yeah.
No, how am I going to? I know why I'm here. Yeah. I'm here because I have a problem. You tell me I'm going to treat it. Or you have a heart problem and the doctor says, well, I'm going to give you something for a headache. Okay, that's the wrong treatment. Okay, and so what we found part of this process is, and as we went on through it beyond the first report, was that there was no consideration for what the needs of the child were. Okay.
But by the judge or the
whole system.
The whole system.
My office, the juvenile department, and of course, we get it to the judge. So if we're not doing our part, makes it hard for the judge to understand and do what they're supposed to do.
So this is a matter of sorting almost on the front end. Who's low risk? Who's medium risk? Who's high risk? And I think that I was looking at the numbers in that report, and it kind of surprised me. In the beginning, when you first took a look at this, it said that the people in detention, the juveniles in detention, 47% of them were low risk, 32% of them were medium risk.
Right.
And so you're taking up all these beds in juvenile detention and possibly exposing these kids to people who might teach them how to do some worse things.
Exactly.
And a lot of them are considered low risk.
Exactly. And that could be why I was looking at people who were in and out and in and out and in and out. But the other part of it is the quality of the referral. Okay? So when we talk about needs, when we talk about going to the doctor and having problems, you present as a problem. The doctor will examine you, hopefully do a full battery of tests, whatever needs to be done, and determine if you're at high risk, medium, or low risk of whatever, okay? But then, so that's your risk factor. What do you need? What do we need to do to bring down that risk factor? And so when we talk about in the social justice, criminal justice, juvenile justice realms, what we're talking about is the treatments, the things that we can expose the person to, whether adult or juvenile, okay, that will correct the behaviors, correct the mental health issues, correct the trauma issues, correct whatever it is. And it could be a combination of things. But you have to appreciate the outcomes in the report, in the evaluation. And then you have to know that the people or the entities that you're referring the kids to, that they are capable of addressing those needs. All of that was missing.
Just to put a finer point on that, so if you have a low risk or a medium risk juvenile, you're not saying, well, let's just go easy on those and move those out of here and only deal with the hard ones. You're saying, let's sort them according to their risk profile, and then let's give them the appropriate remedy for that. Not everybody needs to be locked up and go through the justice system.
Exactly.
And the numbers, the results are remarkable here. The detention population has dropped by roughly a quarter. And going back to what we began the podcast with, even more important, you wrote in the Dallas Morning News op-ed, the time that youth spend in detention before their case is resolved has decreased nearly 60% from 140 days that Jason mentioned now to about 57 days. You're still trying to get to 30 days, though, right?
Yes, if we can.
You going to make it?
Don't know.
We
still have work to do. I mean, this
what else
is
is standing in the way? What are the bottlenecks standing in the way to get there?
Well, first of all, this is an interim report. This is to tell us from when we started looking at this, where are we? Okay.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff is well, all of it is hard work, but it's the vast 95% of it is between the district attorney's office and the juvenile department.
Sure.
And so we're learning. Okay. I did training of my staff on how to look at a risk assessment, make a decision about it, okay, and what types of decisions should be made. The juvenile department did the same thing. There was just a vast underappreciation of the value of that risk assessment. So all of that is in place, but we still need more staff in the district attorney's office, and we're still working on that. We're talking about reassigning and, of course, retraining. And then there's some data that is not available to us, and the state has admitted, we've looked at it, the researchers, and it's kind of wrong on the state side. So we can't really trust it, so we don't know what to do, how to move forward until we get the correct data, and they're working on that.
One of the things you wrote in this recent op-ed in the Dallas Morning News, you said essentially for too long the system has been reactive rather than proactive, which we've discussed here. But you say you changed the question, the way that your office looks at this. Will you explain that?
Well, so when we looked at it, we were looking at offenses, okay, and that a child committed an offense. Now we're looking at risk level on offense and the child. And we're trying to take a different look at what the risk needs profile is. And one of the things that, it's not really my realm because I'm the district attorney, but one of the things that I'm trying to do is to move into who are these providers, what are they providing?
These outside providers.
Yes,
that are
whoever
helping
they be,
you guys.
inside or outside.
Sure.
Okay, and are they actually meeting? Now I've said needs before, but I'm gonna change it. Criminogenic needs, needs that relate to criminal conduct. Okay, that's different from having high blood pressure, et cetera. That's not gonna cause you to commit criminal conduct, but who your friends are, whether you're employed or not, whether you're a substance abuser, dependent, or whatever. Those kinds of things. There are 8 to 10 things out there in the world of criminal justice, and they're common in juvenile and adult that help us understand the risk a person has to recidivate.
Yeah, this required a big change.
But also how to treat it.
This requires a big change, doesn't it, in the culture of how your office and other offices are doing the job. So, you spoke there, you've gone sort of to this data-driven model, so that the data drives the decisions and the policies. You're looking at this like one act does not define a young person, just one thing that they've done in their life. And you sort of start doing that sorting process. Is this child a danger, or did they do something that made them a nuisance, which are two very different things? And then there's one other leg of this that I thought was interesting, and it involved empathy training on the intake side here, where you're looking at brain development, trauma-informed practices, cultural humility. You know that there are going to be critics who say, oh, that sounds woke.
Okay.
You know that exists here in Texas.
Let me say this. There are a lot of practices in criminal justice that are research-based that show to be effective, and throwing the word woke in doesn't register with me. I'm sorry. That's why I looked at you the way. I've never heard empathy training being woke, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm looking at what is effective in reducing crime. And that doesn't have anything to do with the word or the concept of woke.
And how do you get this across to the state? What's that relationship like? As Jason was mentioning, there's this tough on crime approach, at least very much in the rhetoric and so forth. Is there a partnership with the state? Do you get the feeling that this is something that they're looking at and going, "Whoa, you've done some things there. Like what's going on?
So,
can we use this?"
So you talk about the Juvenile Justice Department for the state. We're going to be operating with the Dallas County Juvenile Department.
Right.
So we're not so much operating with the state. They are answerable. They answer to the state, but not us. We go to the department.
But do they take note of what you're doing?
Yes. So, well, these research papers will. And to your point, though, going to Tarrant County. How are y'all what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, way better than us? How are you doing it? And then we went to some other counties. We went to Bexar, we went to Harris County, and we picked up a little bit of knowledge everywhere we went.
So everyone was doing it better than Dallas County?
Mostly yes.
How did Dallas get into this situation?
You know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how we wound up filing 91% of these cases as formal court cases when so many of them need to be diverted to a therapeutic environment, not a court environment. And you can do it quicker, and you can monitor it, and you can get the kid through it, and you can measure what the outcome is, all while you're going from court hearing to court hearing to court hearing.
So
And
you
so
picked the best of the best from
Yeah.
all of these different counties after contacting them. You've had some pretty extraordinary results, some extraordinary numbers since then. Have you gotten calls from other counties now saying, how are y'all doing that?
No, I have not. I have not. But the researcher who's doing this is well known in the state. She was actually recommended to me by someone from the LBJ School of Government, who's a friend, and who is a researcher also. And I told her, hey, I think I have a problem. I'm not certain. Here's what I'm seeing, et cetera, et cetera. Can you make a recommendation for somebody to look at this? And that's how we got to that research, and that's how she came on board.
So explain this so I can get this here. But prosecutors are essentially spending more time to get to know these kids, looking at their case file, a little bit more about their background so they can make a better decision, more informed decision, rather than just prosecute.
Yes.
That seems like it would take time. But you guys are doing it in less time. How?
Well, so the department also now is looking at the kids closer and looking at their immediate assessment and determining whether they need to be, if they're not mandatory to be shifted to us, if they can take care of it. So the department itself has changed, and they're doing more diversion on their own. And that's some of the things that we need to firm up with MOUs and what have you. And keep in contact. The other thing that I don't know that it's in this paper, I don't think we put it in an op-ed, but it may be in a report, is that the relationship between the DA's office and the juvenile department was adversarial during this early part.
Wow.
Okay, so
that
makes it hard.
No,
Yeah, right.
no, we're talking children here, and we should all be on the same page. And so I use this term default mode, you know, how we operate just because we do. And oftentimes, and you know this, I mean, you do things, and sometimes somebody tells you something or you see something and you ask yourself, why am I doing it that way? And maybe that's not the right way to do it. And you change your default mode, right? You change. But that was the default mode down there. It was adversarial. The risk needs assessment was little paid attention to, if at all.
Well, what changed then? Was it the leadership at the juvenile department or something else?
In part, well, a lot of it had to do with me and getting the report done and laying this out. So when we laid out, for example, to my staff, let's just talk my staff alone. When we laid out, hey, we're locking kids up for 4, 5, 6, 7 months and then sending them home when we had the answer to send them home way back 2 or 3 weeks after they were there. The question was, well, what's wrong with that?
I was going to ask you, did you get pushback on that?
Well, I didn't get pushback once I explained the longer you keep that kid locked up, the more likely it is that that kid's going to become a criminal. Okay? And that's the kind of training that I had to go personally do with my staff. This is all drug court stuff. This is all rehabilitation science. It's all reducing recidivism science and practice. Nobody had exposed them to it. And then, of course, the empathy training was done by a third party Phoenix House here, and Phoenix House has an outstanding track record and outstanding leadership in this community. I used to be on the board of Phoenix House.
And it's just a different way of approaching things and a different way of thinking. And so that addresses how you're taking these young people in and sorting them as they're coming in. You did a lot of stuff on the other side of this as to where we send kids and what we have them do. And I think some of these things are really interesting. You created this voluntary diversion pathway for these youth who have problematic sexual behavior. It used to be that you had to go to court, that had to be dealt with in formal adjudication. Now this youth on their own can go, I want to voluntarily go into that. So that really speeds the process to them actually getting to help instead of waiting, perhaps being locked up, waiting to get that same help later.
And ownership.
Because
one of the
which
problems
is huge.
we have in criminal justice is people don't always tell us what the problems are. Okay, and I will tell you right now, male or female, young or old, it doesn't matter, but sexual trauma is not something that people talk about.
Yeah.
And that's been my experience for 44 years now in the criminal justice system. People won't talk about it. And you almost have to figure out a way to coax it out of them. Okay? And I used to practice that. And just for example, women or men, but mostly women who were having trouble in recovery, okay, I would just talk about the fact that sometimes somebody has been sexually abused. It may have gone on for a period of time. Everybody knows it's wrong, but at the time you were taken advantage of, but you were made to feel as though you were a willing participant when you weren't, etc., and the tears would flow. Okay.
So there was your answer.
That was my answer. And I would never confront them directly, but said, if that's an issue, if that's something that needs to be addressed, let's do it. Let's start doing it now, because it's not going away.
And so that can be done voluntarily now, where they say, yes, I want to go do that, which is a big change when you think about the time of that.
Yes.
You also have more teams out there now, in Dallas County, helping to figure out placement for these young people who are,
that's
are
the
going through
department
issues.
is doing that.
And then the last thing that really stood out to me was this pot of gold restitution. Where these young people can go and earn money that counts toward their restitution, which also counts toward getting their case completely dealt with.
Right.
That's a biggie, isn't it?
Yes, but that's the department is doing that. So those are internal things. We have a new department director, Mr. Lynn Hadnot, who's doing, in my opinion, a fantastic, outstanding job. And he's the one that's coming up with a lot of these creative approaches to the kids.
And there's accountability in that too.
Yes.
If a kid is going and working and getting that restitution taken care of, as you said, ownership.
Yes.
Is that unique to Dallas County with the restitution?
I don't know.
I haven't heard of it anywhere else. I didn't know if that's
that doesn't
not common,
mean,
though.
Yeah, but we're not going to hear of every little detail about everything. It could be fairly common because a lot of the things that he's done, are very common sense that nobody before him did.
Wow. You mentioned a little earlier in the episode here about these partners, these third-party partners. Cafe Momentum is one
an example.
We've done a lot with them.
They do a great job.
After Aid to Educate. What happens, though, if you have an offender that goes in there, a youth offender, that fails with those guys? Do they come back into the system? Do they get a second chance or a third chance?
Well, it depends on what the failure is. Okay.
If they just don't show up to these things, like
I don't know what their MOUs are between the department and these entities. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would think that they would look at it from specifically to the child, what the problems are. Let's say they didn't show. Let's say their transportation system broke down. Let's say their family unit broke down. Let's say mom and dad, or they only had one parent, and that parent lost a job and moved out of the area, and that kid is now staying from place to place to place. So there are a lot of factors, and that happens. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Before
it seemed like maybe they didn't get to know these issues. It didn't matter, and they said, you're in violation.
Right.
Face what comes. Here's the other thing I'm curious about too. How do victims and their families fit into some of this? And I know the victims may be, oh, my kid got beat up at school, or my car in the driveway got the window knocked out of it. I want that kid to pay. Have you heard from victims' families or victims at all in any of this? Have
No.
they really they haven't said a word about it?
No.
That's interesting. Does that surprise you?
No. Because what we were doing was creating recidivism. We were creating children who were going to go out and do worse. And what we're doing now is looking at the needs of the child, the individual needs of the child, and putting together an individual plan, just as you would expect your doctor to do for you, as opposed to the person who was in the office before you. You want your plan, not their plan, right? And if these plans are working and these numbers have any relationship to what we're doing when we're reducing crime, we have fewer crime victims. Now, on an individual basis, everybody, I say everybody, many people want more than what the system can deliver to feel justice or satisfied or whatever. And I mean, they want things beyond the range of punishment. They want things beyond the Constitution.
They don't know the law, so
they have a feeling, and they know what's going to make them feel good. And we do have those conversations all the time with people that's not available. It's not realistic. A jury will not do it. A judge will not do it, et cetera, et cetera. This case has problems. These witnesses who said they saw it, they don't say that anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So we're engaged in those types of conversations, but specifically to this area and complaints to me, no.
You mentioned the numbers, these latest numbers that you've gotten from the different law enforcement agencies in Dallas County, showing these violent offenses, these charges against youth in particular, are down by substantial percentages. And again, you're not necessarily drawing the line from point A to point B and going, it's because of our new programs. When will we know, though, that, that's because of that? Is it when we see more trend lines that keep going in that same direction?
Yes.
And I have a political question on that. How hard is that politically to do something like this? Because, you're always looking at the next election too. And this is one of those things that plays out over a long period of time, and people tend to think about today and right now and short term.
Well, that's a good
tough political
question.
decision.
So all of these research projects take time, okay? First of all, it was over a year to get the first report out to identify how the system worked and where it was working well and not so well. It was mostly not so well, okay? So that takes a year, and that was 2023. Now this is 2026, and we're getting this as to some of the changes and how things have changed, okay? But some of that period of time was getting through this adversarial relationship, okay, and getting that. So really what this is going to take is to institutionalize these changes and any others that need to occur, okay, get the staffing right, and get a certain number, statistically valid number of kids through the system in various and sundry ways, and then get a comparison group of kids who did not go through the same system. It may be national averages, it may be another county, or it may be kids here who refuse to do this, that, or the other. And then compare them and see which group did best.
Judge, you got about 9 months left in office. How much of that can you get done in that time period?
All of that, it's not going to happen in 9 months.
Have you spoken to your predecessor about continuing this? Or your successor?
successor.
Your successor,
No. But all of this is just brand new.
Brand new information.
I mean, these numbers I just got today.
How important is it to you that she does carry on this initiative, or at least something like it?
Well, I don't think the question is how important it is to me. The question is how important is it to the community? Because our ministerial community has been paying attention and has weighed in on what's been happening. I think you all know that the morning news, especially your station, kind of rotated the issue over to conditions inside the juvenile detention facility. And at that point, the ministerial community got involved. So I think it's what it means to the community, what it means to my successor. She'll have to answer for that. But once again, I think we've identified pathways to do better. And so what we're trying to do, with the cooperation of a wonderful leader, Mr. Hadnot, is to see where we can come together and kind of MOU this. I'm going to use that as a verb. Okay.
Memo of understanding.
Right. Yeah. And where we can come together on practices that'll get us where we need to be, which is that we treat every kid individually, we respect the risk needs assessment, and you put sort, I use a different word, I think it means the same thing, triage. I would say triage.
It's a good word.
Right.
Yeah.
And whether this kid belongs over here, over there, or over there. And there are some kids who are self-correctors. They really don't need much of anything. There are many people down at the Frank Rowley Criminal Courts building that we send through pretrial intervention, pretrial diversion, and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's based on assessment that they really don't need it. They're self-correctors. You're probably a self-corrector. Okay?
That's strong.
No.
That's-
And I'm being serious. If you
Sure.
were going down and decided to speed down, you got an 635 expressway, you were going 100 miles an hour,
Right.
and you got pulled over and you got a ticket, what are the odds you're going to do it again? Probably none, right? You're not going to do it again because you know they're down there, you'll get a ticket. You're a self-corrector. You don't need the full weight of the criminal justice system on your head to correct yourself.
I think you're giving a lot of grace there.
I just
but
say,
yeah, I get
Judge,
the
I just say
point.
You
don't
understand the
ride
point.
anywhere with Jason because we got to Austin in 90 minutes.
We did not ever do
A
that.
few years
So
back.
I want to ask this.
Yes.
Is it personally, I mean, you've taken this and you took on this study, and that's a big thing to do in the very beginning, to go, something's going wrong. We need to figure this out. And then to make these institutional changes and, break down these walls, that's a hard thing to
break down
do.
silos.
Everybody's in silos. But you've been pushing this, and you're starting to see some really good results that you hope is the beginning of a trend line that we're going to see. And you know what's at stake here with these young people and with their families and with community safety. And you've pushed this so far down this field. Is there a personal frustration? You were unsuccessful in the primary recently, and again, you have 9 months left in office. Is there a personal frustration that comes with that to not see this through as you have envisioned it?
Well, I think that's natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And how do you channel that?
Do the best I can in the remaining months, and then I don't have any control over it after that. I mean, it's just a fact.
If you were to sum this up and to let people in Dallas County know how this is making the streets safer and saving young lives, how would you sum this up in a couple of sentences, Judge?
Well, I guess in a couple of sentences, I'd have to say that we had a model, a default mode that was unwittingly designed to create crime. And by proper analysis, process evaluation, but rigorous with the right people and staying out of their way, we didn't ask for a particular outcome, and we did not dictate how the report should look, okay? We have recognized the errors of our ways, so to speak, both departments. It also helped us get off of being adversarial and being collaborative. And what you see is a collaborative effort between the district attorney's office and the juvenile department that is improving not only the process, but it appears perhaps that we're improving the outcomes of the youth in Dallas County, fewer violent crimes.
You're encouraged by this. I mean, the numbers are encouraging.
Very much so, yes.
What's next for you politically?
Oh, I don't know that I have a political anything.
What's next for you personally?
Well, 9 months, and I have a lot of time to think about what I'm going to do after that.
Any
So,
chance we'd see you on a ballot as an independent
No.
this fall, this November?
No. You can't do that. You have to register back at the
In November,
back in
in the
December.
filing,
In December,
filing
the filing
deadline.
deadline, yeah.
Filing deadline.
So
to run as an
it's
independent.
illegal.
Oh, really? Even
Yes.
to run as okay. Wow, that's to run
yeah,
for,
well, you're,
for any office.
You're an independent.
Sure.
I'm on the ballot. I'm just not of a party, but you still have to put
Sure.
yourself on the ballot. Yeah.
A lot of people were surprised with the primary result. A lot of observers didn't see that coming.
Right.
You were on the inside. You're running a campaign. Did you see it coming in the days leading up? Could you see something happening? Did you have internal polling? Were you hearing things? Did it surprise you?
Yes, somewhat, but somewhat no. So one of the things we can tell, it's made available, who's voting, not individually by name, even though we do get that if we want to,
Sure.
but kind of by category. So ordinarily in the Democratic primary, there are about 124,000 certain people that will show up and vote all the time, okay? So those are your A voters, and maybe B, they show up almost every time, okay? Well, as the voting goes on throughout the days, you have access to A, B, C, D, or E voters. And A is vote every time, and C and D and E or whatever, we don't even know who these people are. And so what I saw was those people, whoever they were, and you don't have any way of reaching them because they don't vote, right?
Yeah.
So you don't know who they are. But they were overwhelming that 124,000. There were more of them. So just to give you probably haven't looked at it, but you can go back and look at all the votes and all the races in Dallas County. There's one race that stands out that just kind of explains it. It's a male candidate, a female candidate. He's first on the ballot. She's second on the ballot. He's a local candidate. He's been on the ballot a couple of times. And she's from Austin. She is a Court of Appeals judge, but they did no advertising because they don't have the money to. He got 77,000 votes or something like that, and she got either 120-something thousand or 130-something thousand.
Wow.
So you have all these new voters, and there are some trends that the political scientists say are true. I don't know. I've never studied it myself. But people sometimes, well, first of all, one of the metrics that's looked at, Gromer Jeffers looked at it, and said that 2-to-1 these voters were women. And women, I don't care what party, what race, what age, or whatever, tend more likely to vote for women.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
Sure.
Okay? And so you have that big influx of all these unknown voters. So I'm looking at this as the days go by, and I'm wondering, what does this mean? I have no idea what it means. I don't know if any of these people know who I am. I know I haven't contacted them because they don't vote or vote sparingly. And so you only have so much money. The only thing I could have done different if I'd had another $1 million, which wasn't going to happen, okay, is to run TV commercials, real aggressive TV commercials to try to just saturate the market and do that. But that was an impossibility.
So you don't see this more as like the electorate was sending a message, but instead more of a case where we had people from the electorate showing up who we hadn't seen in a very long time or ever.
Well, yes, that's the way I see it. But my opinion is based on, number one, that's the way it looks. Okay, and I was watching it every day, but also what the professionals say. The political scientists and the pollsters, I mean, they have basically, well, let me put it, I don't know if you know this, there was no male candidate in Dallas County to win an election.
Wow.
Right. So that doesn't have anything to do with me.
I had not noticed.
Right, that doesn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah. You were just one of the male candidates.
I was just one of the male candidates.
Who brought them out? Who brought out all these new voters? Tallarico, Crockett? Who was it, you think?
I think mostly
Both?
for Dallas County it would have been Jasmine Crockett.
Just because she's from here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let me say this. I ran into a judge from Bexar County who told me she was on the ballot and she was defeated. And I think there's some Trump impact, some Trump anger from what I was seeing and hearing from knocking on doors and talking to voters throughout the process. Okay. And in San Antonio, I think all the candidates who won were Hispanic. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it fell.
Sure.
And so this particular person I was talking to, African-American judge, who told me that after the first of the year, there will be no more African-American judges in Bexar County. Good or bad, that's just the way it's going to be.
Wow.
It doesn't mean the judges who coming in, there's anything wrong with them. It's just that's the breakdown, the demographic breakdown.
Did the confusion at the polls in the Democratic primary in Dallas County, did that cause any issues,
I don't
do you
think so, because that was late on one night.
Sure.
It's almost all said and done.
Too late by that point. Early voting had already had a lot of votes cast.
Yes.
But so you've been in justice here in Dallas County for decades now.
44 years.
Top prosecutor, a judge. I mean, what do you do next after this? I mean, you have to have had some inkling, but it's something that you haven't really had to think about for so long.
Well,
do you go
that's
back
true.
to,
I haven't had to think about it.
Do you go back
so
home?
New Orleans, no. Maybe near Houston. So I'm talking to other people about consulting and maybe writing, and I have done in the past training, drug court training, which incorporates all of these concepts and principles. Okay. I don't know. There could be a job somewhere that would open up that would interest me. I don't know. I haven't seen it or heard of it. It depends on how the elections go, statewide elections. It could be something there. I won't be a candidate, obviously. I'm not interested at this point in my life in being a candidate again. I think in eight elections is enough for any sane person.
That's a lot.
Any sane person.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, that you say that, but it sounds like this is still very much just in your DNA, too. I mean, this is a passion, and it's not something that you can probably totally pull away from. You just may do it through different avenues.
Right. I mean, I could actually, I mean, I'm just musing here, okay? But, I mean, I could actually, if a county nearby or wherever near me wanted to start an alternative court, a drug treatment court, or this or that or the other, I mean, I'm perfectly equipped to do that.
Yeah, you've done that here.
I've done it here.
Yeah.
And Divert Court started in '98, and it's still going. And Divert Court, by the way, is the reason we went from a projected 167,000 prisoners in Texas prisons to an actual 136,000 today, and that includes closing. Right. So in 2005, we had let me go back. In 1990, we had 50,000 prisoners in beds in the state of Texas, but we also had a crisis. We were letting people out. Some people never left the county jail. They just paroled right there, okay? And so we went on this prison building spree, and we built up to 150, but crime wasn't going down. And it was a projection that soon you're going to need 17,000 more. So that puts us at 167. Interestingly, somebody called me this morning and told me, hey, Rick Perry was talking about you on the Joe Rogan show.
What? Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? And,
That's great.
I knew what it was about. I knew
Drug
because...
court?
Yeah.
Huh.
It was about drug courts. And Rick Perry, I've seen him say it. Other people have come to me and said, I was in some city. I'm glad to meet you. Rick Perry brought you up.
That's great.
And said that you were the Democrat that he worked with to close down all these prisons by instituting a more rehabilitative approach to criminal justice. And so none of the laws changed. None of the cases were not prosecuted. Sure. It's just how you handle the case. Now, is that woke on Rick Perry's part? I don't think so. Okay, if you're getting better outcomes and it's costing you less, our Divert Court evaluation, 68% reduction in rearrests, but for every dollar spent, $9.34 in avoided criminal justice costs. So there's something in there for everybody. That's not woke. That's called being effective and cost effective.
That is a heck of a legacy, and perhaps this juvenile initiative is going to be as well. It really just kind of tells us that there are ways to rewire. There are ways to
change
think
your
differently.
default mode.
Yeah, change the default mode. Look at it with different eyes.
Wheeler needs to change his default mode.
You
but
know
that's
what?
another episode.
I do not disagree with that.
Judge, congratulations on these numbers. It's fantastic to see, and then of course your legacy, drug courts, et cetera. You've had a lasting legacy in Dallas County, and we know that. You'll continue to be a guest for us, and we appreciate the insight because I'm sure we'll tap it again in the future.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks
Great
so
having
much.
you on.
Appreciate
Thank you,
both of
Judge.
you. Thank you.